Hi, I'm Stephanie Silverman, and I'm an executive speech coach at Silverman Speech Consulting. Over the past 10 years, I've had the great pleasure to work with a number of really wonderful companies. L'Oreal Paris, I've worked with Thomson Reuters, Cartier, I've worked with hedge funds. These are all very different corporations and people at different levels, but one thing they all have in common is I typically get asked the same 5 questions for each of them. So today I'd like to give you tips for these 5 questions so that the next presentation you give will be a real winner. The first question is usually, how do I make my voice more dynamic? Well, it's a funny problem really when you think about it, because when we tell stories naturally, our voice goes up and down, we emphasize particular words, and we have a natural flow to our style of speech. The first thing you want to do is make sure you understand what your message is. Then you want to pick very specific words to talk about your message, words that will provoke you to use more of your natural speaking ability. So as opposed to using the word dropped, you might choose the word plummeted. Or if something's really big, you wouldn't want to say it's large, you might say it's massive. These kinds of word choices will help to add color and dimension to what you're saying, and you can give them the extra value that they deserve. Now we move on to the second tip, which has to do with these right here. What do I do with my hands? Well, when you're normally talking in a group, you know exactly what to do with your hands. You use your hands all the time to express yourself. But again, when you have planned presentations, a lot of times your hands either are stuck to your sides or they're left flailing in strange ways, and they're not really supporting what you're trying to say. It helps if you think about how you might be able to use your hands to emphasize a particular point. Some of the most obvious opportunities for this are when you're making comparisons. It's either this, or this is more important than this, or back then we used to do it this way, and now we do it this other way, so that your hands actually reinforce the message and give them a visual cue to connect to the words that you choose. Along the same lines, the third point has to do with what you do with the rest of your body. Now, typically people are either glued to the podium in terror, or they're doing this strange sort of pacing back and forth. Similar to how you use your hands, you want to plan where you're going to move. It's important to make those plans based around the message again. So you might say, I'll begin at the podium. Then at the point where I want to raise the question to the group, I'll leave the podium and walk to the left side of the stage. There I'll deliver the question, and when I get the answer, I'll move to the center of the stage to address the whole group. This way you have clear, decisive movements. You don't have to stick to them, but you have something of a plan so that you don't just feel like you're left to wing it when you go up to present. The fourth question I often get is, how do I deal with eye contact? Do I have to look everybody in the eye? Do I scan the room? Should I pick one person to talk to or look just over their heads? Eye contact is an opportunity for you to connect to the people that you're talking to and really make sure your message lands where you want to. A lot of times what makes people anxious when they speak is that they feel that they are the object of everyone else's attention. But what if you were to flip that? What if you were to look at the audience as the observer, not as the observed, so that you're taking in how well your message is landing? It's important to go from person to person, point by point. You don't want to interrupt your point breaking off with each individual, but rather have a concise point directed at a person, finish that point and see how well it lands. Then you can move your focus to someone else. The fifth point is something that I can't stress strongly enough, and that is that if you're going to work on your presentation, which I strongly suggest you do, you must do it out loud. And if you plan to stand during your presentation, stand. Sometimes you have to hold a microphone, hold a hairbrush, hold a rolled up magazine, something to really create the atmosphere of the room that you'll be speaking in and the conditions in which you'll be speaking. Rehearsal's not a time to judge yourself on how well you're doing. It's a time to fix things that don't work. You don't want to find these things out at the time of the presentation. By then, it's too late. So try using these 5 tips. I think you'll find that just these 5 things will help to make the next presentation you give so much more successful, and you'll feel more confident as well. This is Stephanie Silverman for KISS.